and she isn't there. Then he turns around and he calls Paula at a 305 area code, and she ain't there either. Paula Barbieri probably could have stopped this whole thing that night if she had been there to receive his phone call. But now Paula's gone, Nicole is gone, and whose fault is all of this? It isn't his fault. It isn't the defendant's fault. It's Nicole's fault. It's Nicole's fault. And that's... Even in 1989 when he beat her, when he came out of the house, he blamed her. Remember when he spoke to Edwards? He didn't want her in the house anymore. He had 2 other women. And then we come to find out that she found out that he had been with 2 women, and she was upset about that and wouldn't sleep with him. But he took it out on her. When you listen to the October 25, 1993 911 tape, he's blaming her because she had a relationship with a man a year and a half before, after she had moved out, after she had filed for divorce, when she was literally a single woman out there on her own. He always blamed her. Everything was her fault. And his breakup, his problems with Paula, the fact that he lost Paula was her fault. It was her fault because she went back and forth in terms of their relationship, and the fuse was short, and the fuse is about to explode. You're going to take a 10:30 break, Your Honor?
Yes.
And the bomb will explode when we come back. We're getting there. I've talked much longer than I'd ever expected. And I don't apologize for that because I think it's necessary that we have this discussion.
Keep your voice up just a little so I can hear, because you're turned away. Thank you.
So I apologize in a sense, I guess, but I have a duty and you have a duty, and I'm not going to have much of an opportunity later, I think, to talk to you. And so I wanted to share these things with you because I think they're important and because I think they may help guide you in your deliberations. But when we left off, we were talking about the fuse, how short the fuse was getting, and how the defendant was on his way to Bundy in that white Bronco. The same Bronco he drove that night in October of 1993. And so he's on his way, and he is panicked, and he is out of control, and he's calling Paula, and he can't find Paula. He calls her in L.A., he calls her in Florida. She's nowhere to be found. He can't find her. He has lost her. And he has lost Nicole. And whose fault is this? It's Nicole's fault. He made a choice that day. He chose Nicole over Paula. And he lost them both. And so he arrives at Bundy. And Ms. Clark discussed with you yesterday the details of the murder, of both murders. And I don't want to, repeat all that she said. But one of the things that she said that I just want to elaborate on a little bit is his choice, his weapon choice, the use of a knife. This is a rage killing. And it is upfront, and it is personal. And that is why you see all the brutality that you see. Common sense tells us that. I mean, we know that just from life experience and from living in L.A. We know what kind of killing this is. This is a rage killing. And he's using a knife because he is there to settle a personal score, a personal vendetta that he has. He stabs this woman in the neck, and he's right there. I mean, it's one-on-one. And the rage that he has, the anger, the hate that he has for her that night, at that time, it's like it flows out of him and into the knife, and from the knife into her. Into her. And he kills Goldman, and he kills her in this rage. And let me make it clear to you. He's enraged, but he has made a conscious decision, a premeditated decision, a deliberate decision to go there and do what he is about to do to this woman. Otherwise, why would he take a big knife with him, right? He killed her that way because he wanted to make a statement. He wanted to teach her a lesson. He wanted to let her know. He wanted her to be there, face to face, to know just who it was who was doing this to her. With each thrust of that knife into her body and into Ron's body, there is a release, a small release. It's like a tiny time capsule, like contact. There was a release, a gradual release of that anger and that rage. And he stabs and he cuts and he slices until that rage is gone and until these people are dead. And after that rage is gone, he's better. One of the most remarkable things about this case is that after this man, after he did this to these two people, he didn't run away. He didn't jog away. Apparently he didn't limp away. You heard Agent Bonziak's testimony. He just walked away. He had released all of that rage and that anger during this homicidal fit he was having as he killed these two people. And I'm just a messenger. And I hate to be the one to stand here and tell you about these things, but this is a murder case. And this is what he did. All these things we talked about, these are the things that he did. This is how he lived. This is his life. Okay. And so I think we've come full circle at this point. We've shown you that he had the opportunity to kill. We've shown you that he had the motive, that he had a motive to kill. We've shown you in this trial that he was physically capable of killing. We've shown you that he had a reason to kill. We've shown you that he would have killed, could have killed, and did kill these two people. He's a murderer. He was also one hell of a great football player. But he's still a murderer. And so we've come full circle. There was Ron, and there was Nicole. And Ron, he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nicole, she was in the wrong place for a long time. And there's this common factor, this common element between the two of them. The one thing they had in common was this man, this defendant. And so we began with them, two very much alive, vibrant human beings. We went through 1989 and 1985 through the beating he inflicted on her. And we went from that in 85 into 1989. And we came to this point on June 12 at Bundy. And so we've come full circle. And the only common element in all of this, and the only direction in which all the evidence points, is to O.J. Simpson. And I told you when this began that I had the hardest job. Nobody wants to do anything to this man. We don't. There's nothing personal about this. But the law is the law. And it applies to us. It applies to you. It has to apply to him. He made a promise a long time ago. He promised to love and to cherish and to keep her. He married her, and he made those promises to her. He promised to be her husband, and he was. And let me say to you that every wife killer or ex-wife killer starts off as a loving husband. And in every household where there's a marriage between a man and a woman, there's a picture just like that picture right there. There's a picture just like that on every mantle, in every home where the husband killed the wife. What he did that night on June 12th, the night of June 12th, to these two people, this brutality, is a violation of every law, high and low, that we can possibly think of. And I suppose there's some people that say, hey, we should cut him some slack. And, this were a case of, a theft or embezzlement or something like that, you can always make restitution. But this is a very, very serious charge. Two people are dead. And let me say that what you do in this case is entirely up to you. I mean, you're the jury. When I sit down, I sit down. I'm done. I've completed my duty. I've done what the law requires me to do. I've lived up to the oath, my oath, as a member of the district attorney's office. And we hope we presented the best evidence we could. And if we didn't present the best evidence we could, don't hold that against us. I just want you to, when the time comes to go into the jury room, I just want you to, somebody just say, let's calm down, let's elect a foreperson, let's read the law, let's take a minute and let's just look at the evidence. I'd just like you to use your common sense when you do. When you do that, you use your common sense when you try to be objective, when you remove all the emotion out of this case, when you remove all of the sympathy and passion, and when you just look at the facts, the evidence as best you can, you come up with the right decision. The world's watching. Everybody wants to know what you're going to do. Marshall Clark and I know you're going to do the right thing under the law. And whatever you do, the decision is yours. And I'm glad that it's not mine. Let me turn my attention and hopefully yours to the defense case, if I can talk about that a little while. They put on a defense. They called 58 witnesses. And they called 58 witnesses in this case, presumably to help raise a reasonable doubt in your mind as to the guilt of this man. And you heard from some real muckety-mucks, some real big shots in the field of science and forensic science and DNA, and you heard from Henry Lee. A real impressive group of experts, I suppose. But when you consider our case, you have to consider their case as well. And you have to assess the credibility of their witnesses just like you have to assess the credibility of our witnesses. And when it comes to assessing the credibility of witnesses, you apply the same standard regardless of whether it's a defense witness or a prosecution witness. You have to decide whether or not that expert testimony is worth anything or what it's worth. I hope that when you do that, I hope you keep in mind that, people made a lot of money testifying in this case. And you should consider that on the issue or question of whether or not those witnesses are biased. But study the defense case carefully. I insist that you do, as painful as some of it might be for you. But consider this. The defense that they put on in this case, it wasn't really an affirmative defense. It wasn't the kind of defense where they show you that he wasn't there. Okay? At the time of the murder. They never did that. They never showed you that. What they did was they attacked all of our evidence. Well, not all of it. They didn't attack the domestic violence. There are lots of things that they attacked initially. Only to find out, of course, only for you to find out that, well, they didn't have a chance with it. But what you really wanted to know in that defense case, and I can't talk to you directly, but I'm going to assume you're reasonable people, you have common sense, good common sense, you're all successful at life. What you really wanted to know, correct? Maybe I'm wrong, but what you really wanted to know was, where was he at the time of the murders, right? Where was that Bronco? Had they proven to you that that Bronco was not at Bundy, or could not have been at Bundy, that would have been very helpful to you. Would that not have been impressive to you? Isn't that the kind of evidence you want to hear, that you want to see? Credible, reliable evidence on that issue. That's the kind of evidence that raises a reasonable doubt. They didn't do that. They didn't put on that kind of evidence because they couldn't put on that kind of evidence. They don't have that kind of evidence. We all know where the Bronco was at 10:15. It was at Bundy. You would have liked to have known that some other person was with Nicole Brown or Ron Goldman, right? I mean, wouldn't you not have liked to have seen some evidence from some witness that the person that killed these two people was someone other than the defendant? When Mr. Cochran spoke to you during his opening statement, he talked to you about witnesses that he intended to call on. He gave you the names of those witnesses, and he told you what they were going to say. You know, and we did the same thing. I did the same thing. You know, in domestic violence, I told you I was going to call a few other people. I didn't. I think you got the point. You know, and I can't keep you here forever. Apparently, this sequestration thing is a real drag, right? And you'd like to end this experience, and I can understand that. But he promised to present to you the testimony of some witnesses who had they testified, could have perhaps raised a reasonable doubt in this case. So where are those people? Who are those people? Well, one of those people he mentioned was a woman named Rosa Lopez. Do you remember this in his opening statement? He said that Rosa Lopez was the maid that lived next door to 360 North Rockingham, and that she would come in here and testify that the Bronco was parked at 8 p.m. that night, the night of June 11th, that it was parked in the exact same place the police found it the next day. And that it was parked in the exact same manner. Tail sticking out. Remember that? He said he was going to present that testimony to you. He was going to call this witness. Well, where is she? Where was she? You would have liked to have heard that testimony, wouldn't you? He didn't call her. He told you about a woman named Mary Ann Gerchis. And he told you that she would testify that she was out on Bundy Avenue and that she saw 4 men running, 2 Hispanic men, 2 white men, and that a couple of the men wore knit caps. We have a knit cap at the scene, at the death scene. And that this happened at about 10:45. That's what the defense told you they would do. They told you they would call Mary Ann Gerchis to give you that information. And you may not remember all the names, but I'm sure you remember that when you heard this, that wow, the defense is going to call these people? Whoa, this is going to be some dogfight. I mean, these people are going to come in here and they're going to lay an alibi. Rosa Lopez is going to give an alibi for him by showing that the Bronco had been there all night. Mary Ann Gerchis was going to come in and testify that, hey, there were other persons, other men, apparently running from the area near 875 South Bundy. A few of them wearing ski caps, consistent with perhaps the real killer, a killer other than this man here. Did they call Mary Ann Gerchis? What happened to her? Where is that testimony? You'd want to hear that, wouldn't you? And right after they talked about Gerchis, they talked about a man named Tom Lane, who was supposedly down the street on Bundy, who also saw somebody. They told you that Tom Lane saw Nicole Brown standing on